What kind of manga did you grow up with as a child?
I am the third of 4 siblings, and by the time I developed a sense of self, my younger brothers and sisters' collections of yokai encyclopedias and monster encyclopedias were already lined up in the children's room. So from a young age, I was a child who enjoyed reading Shigeru Mizuki's works like Gegege no Kikaro and Akuma-kun. However, at that time, I might have recognized them more as character goods rather than manga works. In that sense, the first work I consciously read as manga was Keisuke Itagaki's Grappler Baki.
When was that?
It was when I was in the lower grades of elementary school. I remember it along with a somewhat unusual incident. At that time, there was a parking lot near my house, and I used to cross it to go to school. The manager's older brother there would beckon me every time I passed by and give me a 500 yen coin.
You didn't have any scary experiences with that person, right?
No, not at all. On the contrary, I don't even remember having a proper conversation with him. It was around the end of the bubble economy, and I have a memory that Japan was extravagantly prosperous for no particular reason. I accepted the 500 yen from him without any suspicion and clutched it as I headed to the bookstore. In that way, I was able to collect the already about 20 volumes of Grappler Baki at the time, with the mysterious, wealthy older brother from the parking lot as my patron. Maybe because I was one of 4 siblings, our parents didn't have a firm grasp of the bookshelves in our children's room, so they had no idea where that money came from.
Rather than buying snacks, you spent it on manga, which already sets you apart from other children, it seems.
Now that you mention it, that's true. At school back then, it was popular to sneak snacks and eat them without the teachers noticing, but I ignored that and was a kid who bought manga. The first volume I bought was volume 14. It had a sideways manga cover showing Baki and Kaoru Hanayama facing each other with their fists, and I still remember thinking, what is this amazing drawing? The power of the art is incredible. After finishing that collection, the next was Hitoshi Iwaki's Parasite. The first one I bought was volume 5. The cover featured a parasitic creature with a deformed face and a large open mouth, and I bought it for the cover as well.
The manga titles you've mentioned so far all seem to have artwork that might be scary for children in the lower grades of elementary school. Were you okay with that?
Well, you see, I had a bit of a tendency to think that scary things were cool. For example, in my mind, Sadako from The Ring equals cool. When I talk about this while drinking with Tatsuki Fujimoto or Yukinobu Tatsu, they say, that's weird. Probably from a young age, I was familiar with Shigeru Mizuki's works, liked monsters more than Ultraman, and preferred the kaijin over the heroes in Kamen Rider. I think that sensibility was ingrained in me from childhood, but I used to be a scaredy cat back then.
You thought scary illustrations were cool, yet you were scared?
This is also an event I clearly remember. When I was in 3rd grade, I often went to a bookstore and once skimmed through Junji Ito's horror short manga, The Long Hair in the Attic. It was about a woman proud of her long hair who got heartbroken and was found as a headless corpse in her room. Nobody knew where her head had gone. That was the scariest thing in my life up to 3rd grade. At that moment, my fear meter maxed out, and I thought I probably wouldn't experience anything scarier in my life from then on. Since then, I developed a kind of affinity for scary things. I understand intellectually that this is a bit off from what most people feel. When I draw the cover for Hell's Paradise, even if my editor asks, isn't this a bit scary? I can answer, what's scary about it? It's cool, thanks to that experience.
One of your formative experiences was Kentaro Miura's Berserk, which is also a scary kind of work. You had a very in-depth conversation about this work in 2019, didn't you?
At that time, I didn't consciously think about it becoming an article later. I just talked as if I was at a drinking party with a senior. Later, when my relatives read the interview, they said it was more of an interview about Berserk than a promotion for Hell's Paradise. That much, I was able to talk without worrying about my own work. And Berserk itself was a manga that gave me a very strong influence on my own creations. That talk with Miura-sensei still feels like it was just the other day.
When did you start drawing manga yourself? And what was the trigger?
Actually, I don't have a strong experience like I saw this and decided to work hard. I remember when I was in kindergarten, I watched Ultraman G in the theater, drew something like a manga about it, and my teacher praised me, so I thought, maybe I can make a living with this.
From that early on?
There was a period around when I was transitioning from high school to university when making a living from manga felt like a somewhat distant dream, but other than that, I kept drawing. so I don't really have a specific place that was the starting point of my activity.
Did you do panel layouts in manga even when you were that young?
Yes, but since I was a clueless kid, my panel layouts weren't even squares. They were more like circles. I kept drawing pictures inside them, leaving a lot of blank space. So my parents would tell me, fill in all the corners properly.
Most kids probably just draw single pictures by copying or tracing without doing panel layouts. Why were you able to do that?
Ultimately, panel layouts were just another form of copying for me. When I was in elementary school, I was hooked on JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and I drew manga starring Noriaki Kakuyoin and Hirofan Green in my study notebook. So my panel layouts back then were influenced by Hirohiko Araki-sensei's distinctive, sharp, and bold compositions. That's probably why there was so much blank space in my manga.
As you got older from elementary school, how did your passion for manga develop?
Until high school, it was really casual. I wasn't conscious about debuting as a manga artist or not. I just drew and showed my work to friends as a normal thing.
How did people around you react?
They enjoyed it. Seeing their reactions, I would draw the next part. This is both a strength and a weakness that connects to who I am now. I can't draw manga without imagining someone to show it to some extent. Of course, there are artists who draw to express their inner selves without considering an audience. But I think the reason I didn't become that kind of artist is because in middle and high school, I kept showing my friends my work, they enjoyed it, and I kept drawing the next manga.
Did you draw with pencils back then?
It varied. Sometimes mechanical pencils, sometimes ballpoint pens.
When did you start using dip pens?
I really started using them consciously after graduating from university, getting a job, quitting that job, and becoming a manga artist. At that time, I had already debuted as a manga artist, but to learn basic techniques, my editor introduced me to Akihisa Ikeda-sensei's workplace, where I worked as an assistant. There, I was taught how to use the pen and how to draw lines, and that's how I developed my current style.
Do you use digital tools?
Yes, the line art for monochrome manuscripts is analog, but many young manga assistants don't have analog tools, so backgrounds are often digital. Finishing touches like solid blacks and screen tones are also digital. Color covers and such are still done analog. Ultimately, it comes down to whether I enjoy using the tools or not. I'm an all-or-nothing type of person, so if digital tools prove easier than analog, I might switch completely to digital. But if you pursue efficiency too much, the fun disappears, and some things get lost. That negatively affects creativity, so I see a certain amount of hassle as a barometer for whether I'm enjoying drawing manga.
Do you have any particular preferences for inks or coloring methods in colorworks?
From volume 1 to 5 of the Hell's Paradise, I used a combination of Copic markers and acrylic paint. Before that, I used only Copics. Analog manga production has the fun of regularly changing materials. From the fan book Hell's Paradise Kaitai Shinsho to now, I've been combining Copics with watercolor paint. Since I use watercolor, I also think about changing the paper. And if it's fun, I keep changing materials. In this aspect of production, I prioritize enjoyment over efficiency.
How do you perceive the transition of your art style?
When I was in middle and high school, my drawings were relatively realistic. Not the kind of realism like Takehiko Inoue sensei style, but more in the line of Sho Tajima sensei. The lines had a somewhat cold feeling, but the characters' proportions were realistic, something like that. I never went to art school or received special art instruction, but I was very interested in design at the time and read anatomy books and reference materials. That remains true even now.
It seems like you gather a lot of reference materials, not only for Hell's Paradise, but for manga production in general.
Yes, from an objective perspective, it might be considered an excessive amount. Whenever a new book related to manga comes out, I can't help but pick it up. And even if it's a foreign book, I read it with a dictionary in hand. Also, when I find analog art materials that seem good for production, I think it would be interesting to try them, so I buy them. But often I end up not using them.
Next, I'd like to ask about your input in production. Among the culture you encountered in your youth, besides manga and related genres, were there any things like novels or theater that strongly influenced you?
In college, I was part of a puppet theater club. And while I wouldn't say it was directly related, I'm also interested in stage theater. I've been busy lately and haven't been able to watch much, but I saw a lot during my student days and was influenced by it. Regarding novels, from late elementary school through university, I devoured mystery novels.
Around middle school, I started with classics like Agatha Christie and Arthur Conan Doyle and read everything. The feeling I had when I was absorbed in mystery novels still unconsciously influences my creations today. Mysteries have solid structures, so I tend to focus on those aspects.
Speaking of other cultures, you like movies and have even drawn promotional manga related to them, right?
Yes. I was lucky to be able to watch movies early at preview screenings, under the guise of work.
Do your preferred movie genres or tastes relate to your manga creation?
Personally, my preferences don't really connect that much with the manga I draw. I watch any genre. That said, I especially like horror. I often talk about this with Fujimoto-sensei and others, and we've said it's good to watch with enough distance that it doesn't influence your own style. I don't particularly like works close to my own inner creativity. Rather, I watch movies more as a hobby. Of course, if I find interesting ideas or direction in a film, I sometimes adapt and transform those into my manga. But ultimately, I enjoy movies as a hobby.
Horror movies must be a treasure trove of ideas for direction.
Yes, that's true. In that sense, movies are a comprehensive art form created by many people, so there are many layers. In contrast, manga can be made by the imagination of a single author, which can be the factor that resonates with readers. So I think it's not good to expect manga to be too cinematic. Of course, it's good if you can incorporate it into your work in a balanced way. However, especially in the soil of the shonen manga I draw, I feel it might be better to have a somewhat narrower perspective. So in that sense, I keep it somewhat separate from movies. On the other hand, there are moments when I want to draw a one-shot manga full of my movie hobby. Even while serializing manga, I sometimes draw storyboards that I have no intention of publishing anywhere.
I'd love to see those published someday. A slightly different question. Could you share a memorable travel experience or something impressive from contact with a different culture?
I've been busy lately and haven't been able to travel much, but when I was in university, I went to many places. Anyone who has traveled abroad probably feels this. In many ways, the scale is different from Japan, so when you come home, you might think, was my desk really this small? That kind of perspective, a sort of bird's eye or relativistic view, really influenced me. What's in front of me now is just a part of the world, and if you change your viewpoint, it can look completely different. I strongly experienced this awareness of trying to think from another perspective during a trip to Italy. It was a busy trip visiting tourist spots from north to south, but the memories from that trip remain deeply with me.
Did you see a lot of paintings and sculptures then?
Yes, it was a tour program that took us to many museums, so I was lucky to see Da Vinci's The Last Supper and Michelangelo's David with a guided explanation, which made it even more impressive. Rather than just depicting things realistically, projecting some meaning into the creation, embedding concepts into the design itself. When I look at the David statue or early grotesque paintings, I realize that people have been doing this kind of thing since long ago, and it really made sense to me.
It is often said that classics are cultures that have continued to survive. There must be something in such universal human cultures that still appeals to people's hearts today.
Yes, that's right. So I really enjoy appreciating classical art as well.
From here, we will ask about how the work Hell's Paradise came to be. You mentioned that you started from the setting, but do you usually decide on the setting first for your manga works?
Actually, I don't often start by thinking about the worldview setting. In this work too, it started from the idea of two people whose interests don't align being paired and thrown into a closed space, and there are several such pairs. This is the skeleton of the work. Very early on, there was also an idea of a child sent to a juvenile detention center and a lawyer who fights. From there, through discussions with my editor at the time, we removed that setting and kept the skeleton part of the story, placing different characters on top of it. The reason I kept the skeleton part was that I really like the changes in human relationships, and I wanted to try depicting that in manga.
I see. So the skeleton of the story and the setting were initially separate things.
The setting of the Shinsen-kyo was something I thought could be used in any story's world setting and would be easy to depict. The characters were different from what they are now. First of all, simply, the strongest ninja who absolutely cannot die is cool, isn't it? When I went back to the story's skeleton of a closed space survival and adjusted it, I thought it would be more interesting if, in a life or death environment, a character who is supposed to be immortal looks like they might die. I thought about how to convey that clearly to readers, And that's how the setting of a ninja who never dies no matter how many times they are sentenced to death came about.
I think the catharsis comes from overturning the common sense given to readers in the story. What do you think are the elements that make Gabimaru the protagonist of your story?
This is one of the things I had in mind since the early days of my serialization. Not only Gabimaru, but also Sagiri share the same values as us living in the 2020s. This is also why the work is set in the late Edo period, a time far removed from us. People of that era had different ethics and senses of human rights from ours. Even though it's hard to empathize with characters who are criminals and executioners, if they share our sensibilities, we feel a sense of closeness. I thought that specialness was what Gabimaru and Sagiri had from the beginning.
Gabimaru's character, who loves his wife, is unusual for a shonen manga protagonist. But it started from there, huh?
Yes. Gabimaru's strong attachment to love and Sagiri's struggles with being a woman are also modern sensibilities. All the criminals in my work share this trait, and by setting them this way, I thought the characters would appear unique.
What are your thoughts on your own character designs?
I'm aware that I'm the type of creator who quite likes design itself. Of course, designing characters is tough, but I like the trial and error process itself, so I have a special attachment to characters born through difficult designs. I also like to have them exit the story within about episode 3 after their debut. Designing itself is not a burden for me. And I also come up with the characters' inner personalities from their designs. Although it's different from reality, I believe that in manga, the inner and outer aspects are closely linked. I talked about that in a past discussion with Mira-sensei. Also, I'm especially conscious of making the main character's design strong and impactful.
What is design strength?
Simply put, it means a design where the character's inherent traits do not waver, even if drawn by other artists besides me. For example, with Mazinger Z, no matter which artist draws it, the unique coolness and slightly scary feeling will come through in the artwork. I believe that is because something is embedded in the original design drawn by Go Nagai-sensei. I always keep that in mind when designing.
Another feature of Hell's Paradise is the incorporation of the concept of the middle way into the work. How did you incorporate this?
I talked a little about this in a conversation with Fujimoto-sensei in Hell's Paradise Kaitai Shinsho. The theme of a serialized manga will inevitably be exposed if it doesn't come from your own experience. Weekly serialization is that demanding. So I think it's better not to decide on a theme beforehand, but to be honest with your own beliefs first. So at first, I drew with momentum without thinking. I'm someone who likes to seek balance, so even if something bad happens, I think maybe there's a good side, or vice versa. I guess that connected with the idea of the middle way. By honestly drawing what was true to me, it took its current form. Anyway, I draw manga honestly. Even if the story seems like it might become a good story, if I don't truly think it's good, I don't go with that flow. Within that, the theme naturally emerged in the work, and the middle way surfaced.
After all, you are a creator, so you have to honestly express what you have inside.
That's right. In the context of weekly serialization, it's really impossible to keep drawing with tricks, and readers will see through it. If it's going to be found out, it's better to be honest from the start. In that sense, at first I drew the story with Gabimaru as the protagonist, focusing on his growth. But as I drew, I became aware that the manga's theme shifted midway to things like the middle way, contradictions, and conflicts. I think that burden is probably carried by Sagiri, and in my mind, the protagonist of the latter half of Hell's Paradise is Sagiri. That's the result of honestly drawing the work.
Manga artists often say that characters start moving on their own in the story, and I think you have experienced that too. I felt that what you just described was a bigger wave that influenced the work itself beyond that.
Exactly. Characters move on their own. When I was a rookie, whenever I read other manga artists' interviews and saw that phrase, I thought, no way, you created the characters yourself. But now I realize it's true, and it really happens. In fact, it's more interesting when it does.
What does it mean for a character to move on their own in a manga?
There are several moments when I feel that way. One is when a character takes an action I, the author, did not anticipate. At that moment, when I think, this person is someone else, I feel the character stands out in the story. If I only let the character take actions I have planned, it stays within the boundaries of a created work and remains a fake existence. But when a character starts taking actions I hadn't thought of, I feel this character is someone else. They're alive. When I can express that the character has thoughts I can't fathom, I feel the character has stood out. In that case, my manga becomes like making a Rube Goldberg machine. I just set up the environment, and where the ball rolls depends on the ball itself.
You mentioned earlier that you are the type who consciously draws manga with balance, but even someone like you sometimes lets the characters take over.
Maybe that's exactly why. Because I can create a work firmly controlled within my own worldview, I want the characters to break out somewhere. And at that moment, I can trust the characters. That is something I want to cherish within myself.